Welcome to Jessayit podcast, and I'm your host, Brittany, as always. I want to take a moment today and speak to you differently, not as a coach, not as someone sharing strategies or techniques, but as a person who is still standing. And I know exactly how hard that can be. The truth is, the reason I created this podcast isn't because life is easy for me, not at all. It's because life has been incredibly challenging, and I survived. There were moments in my life where I genuinely believed the world was going to take me out, not metaphorically, but literally. I have survived SA. I have survived domestic violence. I have survived loss, trauma, and seasons that tried to convince me there was no future left for me to build. I have fought for my life in ways most people will never see. I have coded on the table twice and was not supposed to be here. And yet, I am. Not because I'm special, not because I'm stronger than anyone else, but because there was and still is a purpose on my life that trauma did not get to cancel. And I want to say something clearly, especially if you're listening quietly and carrying your own story like many of us are. Surviving doesn't mean you weren't hurt, and being strong doesn't mean you weren't broken along the way. It means you kept going, sometimes with faith, sometimes with grit, sometimes with nothing but a whisper inside you saying, not yet. There are people listening to this right now who have gone through things they don't talk about, loss they haven't fully processed, grief that still shows up when the room gets quiet, trauma they learn to function around instead of heal from. Many of us have done that. I'm guilty of having done that too. And yet, we're still here. This podcast was created for people like us, people who didn't just read about resilience, we lived it. People who didn't choose their battles, we survived them. People who know what it's like to carry purpose and pain at the same time. I didn't create Just Say It to pretend life is perfect, because that is not the truth. And you will hear me say it over and over again. Life is not perfect. I created it because life is hard, but it's still meaningful. Because faith carried me when logic couldn't. Because what I believe and who I believe in gave me strength when my body, my heart, and my circumstances had nothing left to give. And I know I'm not alone in that. There are people in this world who are still suffering, not because they lack purpose, but because no one ever taught them how to place things where they belong. Pain without boundaries becomes your identity. Purpose without structure becomes burnout. Giving without discernment becomes self erasure. And I have lived all three of those. That's why this podcast isn't just about motivation, it's about placement. Where does your pain belong? Where does your purpose belong? Where do your responsibilities stop? And where does your humanity begin? If we don't learn how to put things in their proper places emotionally, spiritually, and relationally, we will never walk in the fullness of who we're meant to be. We all should be striving to be the person we're meant to be. Greatness doesn't come from carrying everything. Greatness comes from carrying what's yours and releasing what was never meant to destroy you. I believe there are people listening who still feel broken but are called to encourage others. People who have been through loss and are still standing. People who don't want to be defined by trauma but transformed through it. This space here on Just Say It is for you. Not to rush your healing, not to minimize your story, but to remind you that survival was not the end goal. Living aligned is. You are not here by accident. You are not weak for what hurt you, and you are not behind because it took time to recover. You are here because there is still vision. There is still purpose. And there are still people who need your voice, including you. That's why I'm here. That's why this podcast exists. And that's why we're going to talk honestly about the boundaries, healing, faith, clarity, and sustainable purpose. Not to perform strength, but to live it wisely. Thank you for being here with me today. Thank you for staying. And thank you for surviving. This is also a journey for me. This is the first time I've publicly shared my story because I also want to make sure, as I've done the work to heal, that I'm healing with you and we're traveling on this journey together. Again, I am Brittany, and this is Just Say It Podcast.